Alright. Hopefully my sound volumes are up to par. What's going on, guys? This is HirezCast episode 2, the long awaited. It's been a few months now since our first episode, where we kind of briefly just introduced Hi-Res Studio to the whole Tribes community. We didn't really ask too many specifics, as many of you guys have known. If you haven't seen that episode, which is HirezCast episode 1, it's on our podcast section. Lots of good information as far as how the company operates and their mindset on how they develop video games as a independent game developer. We've been basically interviewing Todd Harris on this interview and on the other one, and he's been an absolute honor to be able to talk to him. The guy is extremely professional and has gone out of his way to give us some first-hand information as to what Tribes has in the store for us, or what Tribes has in store for us, I should say. So this episode 2 is it's going to open a lot of doors. It's going to open up a lot of questions. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of stuff said. But nonetheless, a lot of really good information is going to be packed into this episode. I think you guys are, for the most part, going to be extremely happy. You know, after listening and talking to Todd, he kind of gave me a little bit of confidence. I mean, these guys really do know what they're doing, and ultimately they're going to give the Tribes community something that they've never had before, and that's a developer that is going to be constantly honing in on what needs to be tweaked as this game comes to beta and final release. I mean, it's one thing that I can say about the Tribes community, and Tribes 2 specifically, is that, you know, I'm pretty sure all you guys who have played Tribes 2 from the beginning all understand the term UE. And I mean, I can recall not even being able to play the game for the first few months without it crashing, and constant patch support failed, one after the other, just poor support, and ultimately when you listen to this interview, you're going to kind of get a sense that Hi-Res Studio is here to take care of us and to give us something that we all enjoy or have enjoyed playing, and that's to bring back the essence of Tribes, but obviously on a new slate with a lot of new things to take into consideration. So we hope you guys enjoy the show. We're definitely looking at an interview that's probably the longest that we've done. I think our runtime is going to be probably well into an hour. So kick back, grab some popcorn, some Coke, or pop, wherever you're from, whatever you want to call it, and listen in. We've got a lot of good stuff here. I'm going to be later on joined by Ricky and Martin. They are forum admins on TribesNetwork.com. And we're going to have some special shout-outs to a couple people. This interview, first off, has been community-inspired. It's all the questions that we have asked, we as a network have all come together and grabbed community questions to put them together in a structured form from top to bottom, basically. So pat you guys selves on the back for coming out of the way and submitting these questions to get them answered. And I think we've done a pretty good job as a community expressing our opinions. These guys obviously have been listening, believe it or not. They know some of the big key points and what, as a community, what we want out of them. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty sweet. First-hand information, probably one of the biggest turning points to this day as far as information that you guys are about to hear. Really exciting stuff. So let's get the show on the road. Rick, Martin, make the call.
Let's get this show on the road.
It's hilarious.
I think I'm ready. Is it just you today?
No, actually you're joined here by it's me, Chris, Ricky's here, and Martin. So there's 3 guys from within the Tribes Network community. Oh, and you're also joined by Micah. She's kind of the network secretary. We just hire her to pick up trash and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. She's a forum admin, or she at least pretends to be. So
Okay.
they're all listening in as well.
All right. Hey, Ricky. Hey,
what's
Martin.
up?
How you doing? Rick's a little sick, so you have to excuse him. He's not as...
Under the
All
weather.
right. I'll
But,
stay far back from the mic.
I
so
know,
don't
right?
catch whatever he's got.
But at any rate, welcome back. Shazcast Episode 2. We appreciate you coming back and doing a second follow-up interview with us. This interview is a little bit more community-inspired. We really wanted to kind of go out there and see what exactly they wanted to get answered. So, we'll kind of start out with some easier questions and lean into more specifics as we go. So, Todd, what can you tell me about E3? Is there anything that, are we making an appearance there? What are we doing there?
Good question. Thanks for having me back on. Certainly lots changed since we last talked. All for the good, I think. So we're actually skipping E3 this year. We plan to be at PAX West end of August. We may show the game at QuakeCon as well, a little bit ahead of that date in Dallas. But we're going to skip E3. Really, that's the short answer. I'll give you guys the longer reasoning. Two main reasons. One, just in general as a studio, we definitely prefer more of the consumer-oriented shows than the press-oriented shows. That is definitely my preference. But that said, E3 is a huge show, and if the game was at a point where we felt it would be polished enough to show, we would have taken it there. But we've really been focusing on the gameplay more than the polish and the smoke and mirrors. And I think we talked a little bit actually last time in the podcast that the way we work is very much gameplay first. We'll block things in and make sure that they're fun. We'll work a lot of times with rough art models and keep things rough for a while. And we think that's how we make the best game. But it doesn't necessarily get you a polished marketing deliverable real early in the process. So that's the scoop on E3. And also, there have been a number of questions on Facebook. I know people are really anxious to see a gameplay video. And that's also the reason that we haven't put that deliverable out, is because there's just some placeholder models and things in there that if you're looking at it and you don't know that, people can make a snap decision and not know that something is a rough placeholder and think it's finished art. So we put the screenshots out there. We'll have more screenshots to share, and I do expect that we will have gameplay that we put out publicly, that is just some brief video footage, by the end of June. But given that E3 is just a week or so away, we weren't quite ready for that.
So this next question, Todd, is coming straight from our Australian fans. What can you tell us about server support? Or what do you guys have in store for us? Are we going to have dedicated servers, or do you guys have something kind of pre-planned for that? What can you tell us about that?
So the server philosophy is it's going to be central, high-res managed servers. We do want to offer a solution for what I'll call private server environments that may end up being physical servers, or it could be more of a virtual, server room that's hosted centrally and managed by the user. So with a private server, you could choose who plays on that server and set the policy and kind of server flags as far as gameplay parameters and that sort of thing. But it is important to us to have a environment that we're centrally managing, that all users are logging into for user authentication and that sort of thing. So at the high level, there will be central servers with some private clan options.
Have you guys done any work with perhaps maybe any previous Tribes mod developers like Arknox, Zod, for example? Have you guys ever reflected on any of their coding or just their ideas as far as what they've done in the past?
Not that I know of. I don't know if they've had those conversations or not. Certainly in buying the games, we do have access to all the original physics code, and I know they've certainly looked at some mods as far as behavior. I don't honestly know if they've had any one-on-one conversations with any of the mod developers that you talk about, and those physics algorithms. But certainly, we started with some of the original physics algorithms as a base, but a lot of what we've developed around jetpacking and around skiing has been starting with that, and then just play testing and iterating and tweaking until it feels really good and behaves really good. And we're not 100% done with that process, but they're both in a really good place. I mentioned play testing a lot, and we've actually started the phase of bringing people in the studio and having them come in and play, and that includes competitive shooter players not familiar with Tribes, includes folks that are from T1, T2, Tribes Vengeance, and you're never going to get a unanimous opinion from that group, but in general people are finding both the jetpacking and the skiing to be on target, so that's encouraging to the dev team. In general, yes. I mean, Tribes 2 had a lot of that way ahead of its time, I would say, and now many modern team-based shooters have caught up with some of those things, including our own global agenda. So, at the highest level, team play is definitely a priority for us. So we're drawing inspiration from Tribes 2 and global agenda and other modern shooters on things that support team play and knowing the status of your team and your friends and clan mates. So you'll definitely, as I mentioned, have a unique authenticated login. And actually, we were just testing that last night. That was actually our first test from home, just for in-studio friends and family. So that was pretty cool that we actually got the build deployed outside the studio and did our first remote test. And so testing outside the studio, obviously all those features start to become more important around communicating with your team. So in general, can't say we're going to cover one for one every feature the same way it was implemented in Tribes 2, but we're working to support those team-based user interface features.
Another thing that made Tribes 2, Tribes 1, well, both of those two specifically, very unique is obviously movement. I know that there's been a lot of stress with the community, making sure that jetpacking, flying, skiing, things like that, that it has to feel right. That's personally, and I'm sure the community would agree, but these are some of the main key factors that actually are the reason why the community still plays to this day. I mean, there's such a huge learning curve, routes. I mean, you can't just get up, walk, and expect to kill somebody, or you can't just get up, walk, and pick up the flag and expect to come home. There's a lot of strategy behind that. Speed is everything for obviously capping. And, do we plan on sticking to that? I mean, are we going to have to go out there and study, body placement, ski placement, position placement, things like that?
Yeah, well, I think players will find that movement is still a huge part of the game. The game plays certainly much quicker than today's shooters, and individual player skill makes a huge difference as far as how fast you can move and maneuvering in the air and aiming for that matter. So all those elements are very much preserved. Regarding skiing in particular, I think we embrace it, and I think Scott, our designer, would say as far as the level designs that we embrace it even more than some of the earlier games, in that there's specific routes kind of identified and encouraged or discouraged in maps, and so certainly players are moving very quickly, and skiing is just a deliberate part of the game in addition to flight. So if anything, the goal for us is always try to make things easy to learn but hard to master. And with skiing and flight, feel like we've done that, where they feel intuitive to pick up and just get yourself moving. But there's clearly a big difference in our play tests between the experienced players and the newer players, just regard to how quickly they move, how maneuverable they are, how easy or hard they are to hit, that sort of thing. So
what can you say about maps? Are we sticking to the roots as far as Tribes 1, Tribes 2, big maps, big bases, lots of room to fly, lots of room to ski, out of bounds grids maybe perhaps? I mean, and if there are out of bounds grids, are we going to be able to stray away from them, maybe make a route outside and come back in to the playing field? I mean, what can you say to that?
So the size, I would say, we won't necessarily duplicate, but definitely those are representative. I mean, some of our maps have a very classic Tribes feel with large outdoor areas with hills and valley, kind of complemented with base structures to support more confined play. And we've got at least one map that actually uses flight very differently and well, but it's just a different element. So as far as size, I think those maps are definitely representative. We're looking at on the PC certainly a 16v16, 32 player size map, which we think will be about the right size for large battles based on the size of the map. And most of those elements will be preserved.
What can you tell me about map specifics, Todd? I mean, how many maps are we actually looking at? How many are you perhaps working on versus how many we might see on final release? If you could give us some details on that, that'd be pretty awesome.
Well, I can tell you what we've got right now, which is not an official number that we'll have upon release. But right now, we're actively play testing 4 of them on a regular basis. So, in fact, I'll give you some details on them. We have a map called Dry Dock. I think we released some concept for that. It definitely has a classic Tribes feel. It's a large outdoor environment that supports a lot of in-air kills and hills and valleys, plus 2 bases that and those bases host generator gameplay for basically capture the flag sort of game mode, and it's an awesome map. We've got another map called Crossfire that we're playing that was actually, I would say, inspired by Broadside. It's not necessarily the same layout, but some inspiration there. We actually have Katabatic, very faithful recreation of that map, although definitely drastically updated, but it really maintains the same basic layout and size dimension. We played that yesterday. And then there's a 4th map that we're playing, Arx Navina, I think is what it's called. And it's the most different from classic Tribes. It's a more urban environment, kind of with more buildings and streets, and a little harder to fly through, but it gives just a totally different feel. It's almost like kind of an acrobatic Assassin's Creed sort of vibe as you're navigating from rooftop to rooftop and skiing alongside streets and kind of there's a sewer system there. So very different feel, but also really fun to play and great looking map. So those are the 4 that we currently play test regularly.
Katabatic. Wow. Well, you heard that first there, folks. That's pretty awesome. So I guess that's the first map that'll be actually, somewhat remade. Welcome back, pub noobs. I'm just kidding. That's awesome. I'm glad we're actually redoing Katabatic. It's a good map to hone in on. Now, Todd, this is the part of the interview where, you pucker down, dude, because I'm going to ask you a question here that's probably one of the biggest questions that I'm sure you've been aware of, or at least your team has been aware of. And here we go. This is the question of all questions, and it's mod support. What can you tell me about it, man? I mean, are we looking at are we going to be able to mod, or do we at least have the ability maybe mod in the future, if not at the start? What enlighten us?
Yeah, that is I know, a huge question. I see if no mod support equals fail, and no map editor equals fail. And so I guess I'll give a long answer, which is always more, a more complicated answer than a definitive, yes, we will have mod support upon release. So here's kind of the long answer on how we think about modding. One, just, we definitely, there's a lot of mod fans at the studio. Mod teams produce great game developers, and in fact, on the Tribes team, Scott, who's our lead design, as well as Sean, who's our lead artist, as well as, Ben, who's one of our senior programmers. Those guys, at a minimum, they came from mod teams, not necessarily Tribes mod teams, but just saying they that's kind of how they got their gaming chops. And so I and the team are a big fan of mod teams that way, because they make great developers, and obviously mods support experimentation, and fundamentally, I think mods allow a game to progress even after the developer moves on to other things, and that's certainly the history with the Tribes brand, is it's alive today, because of passionate community members picking up the mantle and doing mods. So but all that said, Hi-Rez is definitely not a move-on type of developer. We're kind of the opposite, in that we're all about games as a service. So if looking at global agenda, you might like the game, you might not like the game, but one thing that we're consistently recognized for is the fact that we have updated that game constantly. 3 major updates that were almost like full game releases, more minor patches about once a month. And so we're always developing that thing. And that's really how we think about games. We don't think about games as fire, forget, put it on the shelf, be done with it. We really see games as something where the developer is constantly updating and adding to the game based on community needs. So that affects everything we do. Okay, so whatever we do around tools to support the community, our first priority is making sure we can continue to update the game. And sometimes those things are in conflict. You guys can probably appreciate, if we're updating the game and adding new functionality and someone else has created an offshoot of it, there can be friction between those two things. So all that said, I'll just kind of say, here's our priorities for the project. Number one is just make the core game fun and keep supporting it with fixes. Don't abandon it in a buggy state where modders have to pick up the pieces. So first priority is make the game that we release fun and of high quality. Second priority is have systems in place so that we can constantly update that game based on feedback. Third priority is get a large number of people playing the game, large as possible. And even in the beta process, have a very large number of people playing it so that we can improve that core game with feedback. Fourth priority is have some server flag sort of options, so that if you have a preference for a rule set different than I do, you don't necessarily have to mod the game because it's complex with the way games are built today, but you've got some way to change flags. So maybe, let's take a gameplay example. Let's say, if the generator is down, what's the rule on spawning vehicles? And maybe we end up saying that, okay, you can't spawn vehicles in a map when the enemy team has taken down the generator. But there's a group that really lobbied in beta to have that rule be the opposite and still let you spawn vehicles. Well, that might be something we would make a server flag, and if people were really motivated, they could, again, get a private server and set that server flag and have that parameter. And there might be a third group that wants to play the map with no generators as well, so that would be a flag that they could potentially set on the server. So after we do all those things, then we'll look at kind of what sort of tools we could give the community to potentially expand it. But the mod tools are definitely lower on our list than all those things above the line. So that's the scoop.
Okay, so basically, Todd, what you're saying is, the door is open for modding. I guess it just has to be open through you guys. You basically have to give us the ability. So that's actually Good news. I mean, that's good news. That's good news. I think the community will be happy to hear about that. I mean, it's not so much directly, but at least that there is an ability, perhaps maybe somewhere down the road, or who knows, maybe you guys will decide to open it up for us. So good, good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a dev. I would love to be able to update the game and to have people mod, but I know that that's a difficult thing, and so I've got to pick, and we have to pick as a studio which is more important. And for us, the most important thing is being able to constantly update the game ourselves versus just kind of leave it to a community. Because to be honest, I'm afraid if we went the other way and built a great set of tools, we might end up with a lot of people playing different versions of the game, but a very, very kind of fractured, splintered community. And what we want is, the world to be playing Tribes. We obviously we bought the Tribes franchise. We have big plans for the franchise. We want a lot of people to be playing and exposed to the core game. And we think the best way to do that is for us to be able to be responsive and keep delivering new content, new maps, new weapons into the game. And so that's really what's our top priority.
Can you speak in behalf of any current mods that you guys might be working on at the moment? Obviously, Capture the Flag is one, but I mean, are we going to bring back old school Arena, Siege, Rabbit? I think there's a few others out there that I might be missing in Tribes. So, I mean, what can you tell us about that?
I mean, right now, I'll just say what we've been playing the most is, again, kind of Capture the Flag. Certainly is popular in studio with the map that I mentioned that has bases and generator support and ability to use vehicles and deployables. We've also been playing just a bit of like team deathmatch and a bit of Rabbit, I will say we've also implemented. So those are the games right now that we've mainly been playing to get all the core features feeling really, really good. I also will say that, I mean, implementing Rabbit, because of all the other systems, it was literally like a day or two worth of work. So we've got a long list of potential game modes to add, but we want to make sure, the ones we start with are play well and are going to represent well in beta before we add too many more.
Okay, and all right, we heard you earlier also discuss Scott as your lead designer. Is there a little formal introduction that you can give to us about him as far as what exactly he does at Hi-Res Studios?
Yeah, so the way since we talked last, right, we've taken Global Agenda free to play. We've kicked off another game that we announced called Smite, and we've got Tribes going on. So we've really got three separate self-contained teams now at the studio. So Scott was one of the designers on Global Agenda, certainly very familiar with Tribes. As I mentioned, he came up from the mod community, including some Battlefield mods as well as other things. And so Hirez, who is the co-founder of the studio and the money man behind the studio, is certainly kind of chief designer over all of our projects and gets to make veto calls. But day-to-day, week-to-week design guidance is being provided by Scott. So, I've thrown out his name a few times, and he's doing great work on the project.
Well, Todd, Ricky Minaj is back once again from episode 1, and he actually has a few questions concerning Xbox and, going towards a console division, we should say.
How's it going, Todd?
Hey, good, Rick.
Yeah, things aren't so hot over here.
Sorry you're sick.
Nah. What these guys don't know is I have the office set to self-destruct, like the season finale of Walking Dead, because I can't let what I got get out. I can't let that happen, guys. No, I saw that when you guys announced Tribes Ascend that you had Xbox 360 and PS3 as platforms you're releasing on. Will these be like full retail releases, like in GameStop, or is it going to be over the marketplaces of those respective consoles?
Good questions. Well, I'll give you guys a scoop. So there's definitely been an update since that release. So actually what we officially released with Ascend was we put on the video trailer PC and XBLA with other platforms under consideration. Between the video and the press release, that was our statement at the time. As we've looked at the space, I can tell you that we will definitely release for PC first and primary. So there's actually an audience, I think, on the console. We've heard directly from folks that were excited about the franchise going to console. On the other hand, there's probably even louder voices saying Tribes will never be playable with a controller. If you think it is, you don't understand it. So there's been a lot of noise around that, but we've really decided to go PC first and look at the consoles as a secondary option. So that's a pretty big update that I'm revealing here. So you guys get a scoop.
Oh, okay. That was great. Yay! Yeah, that's not.
Cool. And really, let me tell you the reasons. One, definitely, the franchise was obviously born on the PC, so the hardcore fans and media kind of expect it to be at the PC, and a lot. We felt like we'd be fighting a lot of perception around, hey, is the PC getting to be consoleized or in some way sacrificed or dumbed down? And to be honest, we never felt that way, but certainly there was a perception there that we were always fighting. So this hopefully removes that. So as far as the way the UI looks, the way the controls feel, we'll go PC first, and people will know that that's the primary platform we're designing for and play testing on. Even a bigger consideration was all the stuff I was talking before around being able to update the game frequently. Unfortunately, the consoles are getting there, but they're just not there yet. Even with kind of the marketplace idea of XBLA or PSN, there's still a very kind of rigid, certification process, and you have to go through typically a publisher and the console provider before you can put out updates. And again, we want to put out a lot of updates over time, very frequently. And so the PC is the best platform for that, and the best platform for working directly with the players and not having a lot of kind of middlemen in the way. And that's how we operate best as a studio. So that's more than anything the reason for PC first.
I thought it was kind of criminal how we didn't ask about weapons. We just kind of let that out. Like no one brought up a spin fuser at some point or the repair weapon. I don't know. It's kind of upset.
I'll validate. You guys saw the screenshot. So yeah, spin fuser, disc launcher is in the game, and there is the ability to repair as well. Those can be two official confirmations, and many other ones from Classic Tribes will be recognized, and we also certainly have a few new weapons. So I won't do any more reveals other than that, but those are definitely both in the game.
Martin just whispered something in my ear, and he said something about will you be able to Uber other characters like you can in Team Fortress? I don't know why. Okay.
What is that?
Uber? It's when Uber. You just I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail the podcast.
It's all right, Rick. That's why it's a podcast, man. We have fun, and we move on. And you see the door. Get out of here. You're fired.
No, I'm good. That was it. I just wanted to know kind of what.
Now, Todd, what can you tell us about the Unreal engine that you're using? I know that it's a modified Unreal engine. Is it the Unreal 2, Unreal 3? I'm hoping Unreal 3. It should be at least. But, what can you tell us about that?
It's the Unreal 3 engine, as well as, Batman Arkham Asylum, BioShock, Global Agenda for that matter. A bunch of games have been built on it, so including Unreal Tournament, Gears of War, etc.
Well, the Unreal 3 engine definitely has a lot of new features to it. Is there anything that you can talk about as far as, are you guys going to be taking advantage of some of the new material that's available for the Unreal 3 engine, implementing it into Tribes Ascend?
The engine it's an awesome engine. It was powerful for us in Global Agenda, and Global Agenda is on a much older version of the engine, and that we haven't been able to migrate to the new one. So the dev team loves being on the latest and greatest version of the engine. And they've just made a lot of improvements. So, I mean, probably I guess the biggest one that just screams, because it's the first thing that you recognize, is the user interface itself. So the old UI that was built into Unreal Engine 3 was pretty clunky, actually. It was hard to work with. It didn't present very well. And in the latest version, they integrated with another tool called Scaleform that lets you do more Flash action script sort of interfaces. And you can do some really nice looking, sexy stuff, and it's easier to author, and it performs a lot better as well. So you're going basically from something that was hard to use, didn't perform, and didn't look good to something that is easier to use, runs really fast on lower spec hardware, and looks really good. So that's a big upgrade all around.
Okay. There are a lot of veterans out there, a lot of Tribes veterans, that is, and they would like to know, in your words, what are we going to get out of Tribes Ascend that separates itself from any other previous Tribes game that has released in the past?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of stuff. I'll kind of hit it at multiple levels, I guess. One, the first impression, I was just talking about user interface. So the first impression, obviously, the graphics, the UI, it's gonna have sizzle and be modern looking. That's the first impression. Next, when you're in a particular map, I think that the level design itself has been, it's just been finely honed to embrace, kind of as I was mentioning before, embrace skiing more and even use flight differently. I mentioned the Assassin's Creed sort of map, which is a very, very different experience. And so that'll just be an alternate experience for players, in addition to the maps that feel much more classic, or even were taken from older Tribes maps. So level design innovations there that are all about player individual skill and that learning curve that we were talking about. So level design that really uses the learning curve. Second, as far as a gameplay system, I think that the base mechanic itself is very strong and improved. I think it takes the best from some of the old concepts. So the system that we have is, without getting into too much detail, as you do good things in the map, you get credits that you can then earn to purchase different deployables and use those things, or vehicles, use those things to go on offense or to secure your base. And I think we're going to see a lot of really cool emergent gameplay there, because there's just more flexibility in placing things like base turrets and other defenses, and they all come to players that earn them by doing good things in the match. So I think that's an improved mechanic that's going to work very well. Let's see, across matches, kind of from game to game, shooters, as they've gotten more modern, have started to embrace more character persistence. So ranks and other things that follow your character, and ways for you to basically kind of earn additional levels and prestige in the game. And that's going to be something that we bring to the franchise. So higher level characters will have a larger variety of tools at their disposal and generally look more badass. So that character persistence is an element. And then certainly service. I guess just as a studio, as I mentioned, we're all about ongoing updates. So we're not just going to put this thing out and then turn to the next project. We really want to be supporting the Tribes franchise for a long time. And I guess that's a pretty long list. The last one would be fame. Hopefully, we want this to be a big game. We want the Tribes veterans that are good enough to, be dominating other individuals or other teams. We want those accomplishments to be known by millions of people, because that many people have been exposed to this game and are playing the game. So all those things.
Okay. So how about some good stuff here, Todd? I mean, when are we expected to see closed beta, open beta, anything as far as maybe a final release for the actual game? Don't leave me hanging. I need some answers. The Tribes Network will kill me if I don't get anything from this. Well,
let's see. Can't nail down a release date. I can tell you some of the big milestones. We can maybe close with that. So remote testing, as I mentioned, literally last night, we ourselves played the game for the first time outside the studio walls. So that was a big milestone. That means we've got some of the core systems in place to start ramping up beta activities as long as the game's in a good enough state. So we will have the end of June, as I mentioned, a gameplay video that's out that at least gives people a glimpse of what the game looks and plays like. Over the summer, we will certainly have beta activities. And as I said before, we'll be on the show floor, certainly at PAX Prime at the end of August. And before that time, we want to have the game exposed to a large number of people in some beta format. So whether we're released at that PAX date or whether we're simply in an aggressive beta, that's the time frame that we're thinking about as far as a lot of eyes on it. And certainly at PAX, that would be a public booth where people could walk up and play it. So the game's going to be in a good state by then.
Okay. When you say by the summer, are you confirming or not confirming whether there'll be like an actual beta release for everybody to download, or are you just specifically aiming that towards PAX?
By the summer, I'm not necessarily saying open beta. So I think that would be some degree of closed beta. It might be a lot of people, but you're going to still need a key by that point. So I think after PAX would be a point where we'd be, I'm hoping that PAX is, let's say, a launch event of some kind. That might be the launch of release. It might be the launch of open beta, but it's a chance where people could walk up, see it on the show floor, and then have an opportunity to experience the game for themselves, even if it's in a open beta state after PAX.
Well, Todd, is there anything that you'd like to get off your chest? Maybe anything new that we might not have asked or covered that you'd like to let the community know about?
No, just thanks for the questions, and I know we've been a bit quiet, and hopefully people listen to this understand a little bit about how we work, and we're focused on the gameplay, which means we don't have as many polished deliverables up front to share. That'll start to change, like I say, with the first gameplay video, but that's why it's we're a small, aggressive developer, which means we just don't have a team that's pumping out smoke and mirrors sort of deliverable. The bad news is that means you have to wait a little bit before you get to see cool looking stuff. The good news means that when you see something, it's actually representative. When we even did the teaser trailer, those models that we were showing, those were high-res versions of the models that we actually use in game. The screenshots were not photoshopped. They're actually screenshots from the game. And same with the gameplay video. When we release that end of June, you'll actually see stuff that's real. So,
well, Todd, once again, it's been an honor to have you on the Shazcast of TribesNetwork.com. And we hope to hear from you soon with a little bit more information. If so, we'll definitely keep our members and the community up to date on that. So with that said, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks for the great questions.
Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed the interview. Special thanks and shout-outs go out to You Commando, Pyro, Tribesman, Notman, White Whale, Aldran, JDFX, Raz. Let's see. Also out to all the Australians out there. They handed us some pretty cool questions, some concerns of theirs, and hopefully we answered your questions there, or Todd answered your questions. If we missed anybody and you feel like your question was answered and we didn't throw your name out there, just send us something through PM or email. We are going to list or have a list of all the individuals who partook in the questions that were asked today. We're going to be posting them up as a news post on TribesNetwork.com, just as a big thanks. So this is the part where we kind of brainstorm on what's been said and kind of dissect the interview. If you need to listen to it a couple of times, go back. A lot of little key issues there that you might pick up on, and a lot of little details. A couple things that he said, it kind of makes you wonder, So yeah, until the next interview, which we will be starting to work on this week, we'll hopefully have some sort of news out here sometime within the month. And we'll see you for our main news, which will be releasing towards the end of the month. Later, guys. Thanks for tuning in.